Emily Flinkstrom is the Executive Director of Fairtide, and Megan Shapiro-Ross is the Director of Footprints Food Pantry, and they're going to give us an overview of the project.
Thanks, Polly.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. We are delighted to be here. We always love spreading the word about this exciting project that we are working on and bringing to our community. We'll give a brief intro about each of our organizations for those of you who may not be aware. So as Polly said, I'm Emily. I'm the director of Fairtide. And our agency has been around for 25 years serving our community. We provide housing and supportive services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. So we were founded by a group of community members who recognized that homelessness was an issue in our town. And they raised the money to purchase and renovate a house right here in Kittery, and they turned it into 5 units of housing for individuals and families. And for the first 15 years or so of our organization, we ran that as a 2-year transitional housing program. So we would move folks into the housing, our case manager would work with them, and then the idea being that after those 2 years, we would help them move out to another place in the community and provide support as needed. But 6 years ago, we really took a good look at our model and at the needs and gaps in our area, and one of the outcomes of that was to move from a transitional housing program to a permanent housing. And all that really means is that it's very similar to how we're used to do things, but the folks that move in don't have that weight on their shoulders of needing to find somewhere else to go after 2 years. A lot of the reason we changed our model is because there is nowhere else to go. There's very little affordable housing in our community. So we were creating this really great safety net. People had jobs here, kids in schools here, and then having to move them several communities away, which just was counterproductive to the stability we're really trying to help people find. So we now have a permanent housing model. Our case manager still works with all the households for whom we help secure housing. We've also been growing over the last several years through a couple different avenues. One is through partnering with landlords. So Fairtide has a landlord incentive program where we offer a menu of incentives to area landlords who rent to folks that we work with who often have a rental voucher in hand. And those incentives range from a sign-on bonus to a risk mitigation fund to support from our case manager for the tenant and the landlord. So we've been growing that way and opening up opportunities for housing right now. But then we've also been working on longer-term solutions, on building new units of affordable housing. So we, after several years of laying the groundwork and working on zoning changes and really garnering support from our community, we have 2 housing developments in the works now. So one of them will be 6 units and it will be on the same site as our Mainspring project. And the other project will come probably in a couple of years through a partnership with the town of Kittery. So we intend to continue to work on building and bringing new units of affordable housing and advocating for affordable housing development in general, and continue to work with landlords.
So Footprints, as many of you know, was founded in '92. It was founded by a group of community members who saw a need in our community and created a food pantry, which is how most food pantries have begun. Footprints operated in a traditional food pantry manner for 25 years, like most food pantries, and it really exaggerated not just Footprints, but all food pantries, the scarcity mentality among individuals who utilize food pantries. And the scarcity mentality is a little bit, it's a lot about not knowing what you're going to get next or when you're going to have it next. And I've said this story a million times, and Emily's heard it, but the best way that we can relate to the scarcity mentality is the toilet paper fiasco of COVID, where so many of us went into the grocery store and ignored the duct tape lines on the floor and went right to the toilet paper aisle and stockpiled toilet paper because we weren't sure if the next time we went to Market Basket if there was going to be toilet paper. And food pantries have been doing that to, not with any malintent, but to individuals who utilize the pantries for decades. And so individuals never quite knew when their next bag of groceries was going to come from. And food pantries have changed a lot over the years, and Footprints was part of this, where we handed out a prescribed bag of food, and that's what you got. Like, so if you had canned tuna in there, but you disliked tuna greatly, you got canned tuna. And Karen Brown, who was the executive director before me, really switched the model to a client choice model, individuals choosing what they want. And since then, we've now grown to not only client choice, but abundance mentality, where you can have as much of anything that you want at Footprints with no questions asked. And many thought I was ridiculous to implement this abundance mentality, and at first I might have been because we got clobbered. We did, and I just kept saying, nope, what's the worst case scenario? Someone's gonna have a shed of dishwasher detergent in their backyard. That's the worst case scenario. Let's keep going. And now it's amazing. We not only have the abundance mentality, but individuals can shop as many times a week as they want. So we're open 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays now to accommodate work schedules. And we're seeing individuals just stop in for extra produce. We've taken on a real nutrition security focus. So most of our finances are going into produce, eggs, dairy, and quality proteins. We do not purchase any processed foods at this point. We certainly have a number of processed foods that come from the government or from Good Shepherd or from donations. But we're really excited about how we've grown and the focus. We're seeing individuals who now have that abundance mentality who might say on a regular basis, I didn't need to come last week, I had enough food, because we're giving so much out each week to support a family. So that's been our greatest, I think, growth. We've really spent a lot of time looking at why is there still food insecurity in this community and how can we solve that? And that's what leads at least us towards Mainspring. Is it's not so much about food. There's tons of food. There's plenty of food for everyone in this country. It's more about low income and accessing food. And so our mission is to eradicate food insecurity, but also to support the lives of those who come into the Footprints community. And by support, that usually looks like connecting with Fair Tide and connecting with York County Community Action and putting in place support for individuals in all areas of their life. Food just happens to be the highest touch point, so we see the individuals most frequently and build those trusting relationships, which all agencies do. We just happen to see people 1 or 2 times a week. So it's a great entry point into a support system. And we currently have 75 volunteers at Footprints with a waiting list, which makes us one of the luckier organizations in town. But you want to talk about how the idea was in 2019 started?
Sure. I'll first talk a little bit about the need we're seeing.
Yeah,
if
of
that's
course.
Okay. So from Fair Tide's perspective, as it relates to housing, this is no surprise to anybody that housing prices have been rising in our area for many years. And doesn't seem to be any stopping point. So in 2020, just here in Kittery, about 70% of households paid more than 30% of their income on housing costs. So that means that there was a large number of households who were really spending a good chunk of their income on housing, and that leaves very little left in the budget for any other expenses. So anything like a unexpected car repair or a medical bill can really push these households over the financial cliff. And so with the recent rise in inflation and grocery prices increasing at a crazy rate, we, both Fair Tide and Footprints and other social service agencies, are seeing a lot more people who are reaching out for the first time, who really need that assistance, who are struggling financially. And so we've all had a greater demand for services and are just seeing an increasing number of people who have never had to ask for help before and are finding themselves in a situation where they need to do that. And oftentimes that's really difficult for households. They have really very little idea of how to enter the system. And once they do get into the system through any number of entry points, it's very hard to navigate. So our agencies are spread out, across our community. We all have different hours of operation, different intake processes, and so it really is a struggle to figure out how to navigate all the resources that many of these households need in order to really be truly, fully supported and lifted up out of poverty. So back in 2019, a group of us social service agencies got together and started talking about how we can be doing this better. How can we better support our community members? How can we be doing this in a more efficient fashion as agencies that are serving a lot of the same folks? And what came out of that meeting was this vision to create a one-stop shop resource hub. You know, we thought to ourselves, wouldn't it be amazing if we were all working together under the same roof? So we left with that unified vision without having any idea how we were going to actually do it. And then fast forward a couple of years, and we had some money that became available here in Maine through the American Rescue Plan Act. And that was an opportunity that we decided to take advantage of. It was the perfect fit for this type of project that was going to, you know, greatly benefit our communities. And so Megan and I went in front of the York County Commissioners and requested $750,000 of York County's ARPA allocation to purchase the property that will become the home of Mainspring. And they also saw the value in this project and awarded us the funds. So we purchased the property at 22 Shapley Road here in Kittery back in April of last year. And many of you may know that as the old Kittery Family Practice Building. It's the big blue building on at the blinking light on Shapley Road. And so now we have the property, and it became real. And we started really nailing down the details of what partners we could have in there, what could this look like, and really turning our vision into reality. You want to talk a little bit more about who those partners will be and what that will look like?
So the building will be occupied by Fair Tide's administrative office, caseworker office, and landlord engagement, and their thriving thrift store, which will be an incredible front-facing on Shapley Road, will be the Fair Tide thrift store. The side of the right side and the will be Footprints. We're going to a full grocery store style market, so when you walk into Footprints, you'll no longer feel like you're in a food pantry. You'll feel like you are in a grocery store. There'll be a kids area, which is sponsored by Dunkin'. There'll be a waiting area with our meal of the week. We do these recipe kits each week, trying to increase nutrition plus knowledge about whole food cooking. We'll have those samples out. We were going to have our most exciting piece is a commissary kitchen to increase our distribution of prepared meals for the community, which is a really huge growing need for us is prepared meals, because the number one population that we're seeing a drastic increase of individuals utilizing the pantry are senior citizens in this community, and who are really struggling to pay their costs. So we're super excited about the commissary kitchen for nutrition classes combining with SNAP Ed. And then we'll be on the downstairs. We'll also have 2 boardrooms that we've talked to that'll be for use of anyone in the building, but also anyone outside of the building. Adult Ed has reached out, both Kittery and Marshwood, to utilize those for daytime classes. York County Community Action is joining us with their social outreach worker and their WIC program. General assistance we are hoping for from both Kittery and Elliott to be administered in the building, which is really exciting, because right now, if you are a member of any community, most likely you go to the town hall for general assistance, which is the new term for the welfare office. And it can be daunting to be next to your neighbor who's registering a car and you're asking for support with fuel assistance. And we're really excited to bring that under Mainspring's roof if it goes as planned. Then we have some partnerships and conversations happening around medical, some form of medical support, like a triage, mental and behavioral health, substance misuse, and what am I missing? Legal aid, tax aid.
Yeah, we're still working through a lot of the details of the partnerships, and I feel like we have new ideas every day.
They just keep coming, yeah.
And people reach out to us regularly after they learn about the facility and would love to be a part of it. So the idea, though, is that people in need have one place to go, that they can enter the doors of Mainspring and they can have access to these comprehensive programs and services that our agencies are going to be able to work much more efficiently and effectively. Right now, we are on the phone with each other all the time, trying to coordinate care, which is great, and I think we're doing the best that we can at this point, but it will be a game changer to have all of us be able to just come together, in the conference room and talk about some of the folks who really need all of our touch points. And so we're building out the programming so that people can get what they need in one place in a really client-friendly way. And it's going to be a beautiful facility. I mean, I don't know how many of you have been into Fair Tide's thrift store. My office is in the back of the thrift store. It looks very similar to the thrift store. It's just crowded, and I love our thrift store. It is the most amazing resource. and there's some real treasures, but we outgrew that space years ago. And in Footprints, it is very, similar fashion. So to be able to provide our clients a place to go that feels good, and especially at the most stressful time in their lives, it's going to be a gift for all of us agencies to see, but also for the clients to be able to enter a space that's comfortable and relaxing and welcoming.
And to know what services are available. We are working with someone this week, actually, or in the last few weeks, who was referred to me through York County Community Action, which was a series of emails and phone calls, and then referred to Carrie, who's a social worker with Fairtide, and then we're working with the Lions Club to get some medical equipment. And he said to me, I just don't know where else to go. Like, I need a hospital bed. Like, what am I going to do? And, so we get it to the Lions Club, and then we go to Fairtide to get his housing, outfitted, and Fairtide staff puts together a whole thing of housing. They don't have hospital bed sheets, so they order them for us, one of their volunteers. And it just this like network. So for agencies, this model is going to make life a lot easier. For individuals who are utilizing the services, this is going to be life-changing, because it is a full-time job to utilize services. And most people are working full-time jobs who are also utilizing the services. So to be able to share the onus of navigating their path out of poverty is something I think we're both pretty excited about being able to do. And we're not going to own their path out of poverty, but to share that and help individuals navigate who don't know what services are available and who really just don't have the time in their day from raising a family and working full-time to figure out how to get to the food pantry and to the housing agency and to general assistance all on the same day. This is going to be a life changer.
And we, Fairtide and Footprints, are going to co-own the building, so we're going to condo the building, and so both our agencies are going to benefit from the stability of that ownership. And we're going to be able to pass that stability on to the partners that we have in the building with us. So many of them will rent the space, but we'll be able to offer that at a very low cost. So it helps, kind of raise up all the nonprofits that are under the roof of Mainspring. We'll be able to share costs, share costs and share services. So we'll have one receptionist, one intake person who will be able to help do a little bit of triage as well and get the person that is entering Mainspring to the right place. So there's so many benefits beyond the obvious ones that are Mainspring will provide. One snowplow driver, yes. Yes, so there's, and this is a proven model. We're not inventing this. This is something that exists in several places across the country. We've spent a lot of time looking at some of those models and trying to emulate what we see as the best practices and the ones that rise to the top for us. Out of those examples, but tailoring it to our community. So tailoring it to the needs that are here, to the agencies that exist here. And so it's really going to be a proven model that is fit for our area.
And modeling it after nonprofit centers throughout the country that are successful, we're also modeling it after what we've seen haven't worked. Like if you just take the food lane, we have been handing out food in the exact same way since 1935, the Great Depression. We have tried to solve food insecurity through handing out food. And it's just not about food. It's just not. And because we would have solved it, because there are so many great agencies out there doing so much work around food insecurity. And our numbers in York County climb 2% every year with individuals who identify as food insecure. It doesn't make sense, so it doesn't add up, right? If we've been doing this since 1935, handing out food in the exact same manner with, obviously those changes around nutrition security and abundance mentality, but we're still handing out food, which is a great weekly benefit to individuals who need it, but it's not looking at the root of the problem. And Emily and I have both recently read an article that I think spoke really well to Mainspring, and it talked about, the article was titled "Food Insecurity Isn't About Food," and it's about low income. And it also talked about if you share the mission of all the other agencies in your community, you'll shorten the line at your own. And so I think Mainspring, we're all sharing each other's missions in hopes to shorten the lines at each of our at our agencies.
And the model itself is going to serve as homelessness prevention. So I was talking about many of those families that are really financially insecure, and there's the growing number of people who are in that situation. So if we can catch those folks, if we can help them access that $200 that they don't have in their savings account, but they need to repair their car so they can get to work, so they can keep paying their bills. Those are the things that we'll be able to do by all being in one place and really a very visible location so that people know where to find us, and we can help people stay and remain stable in their homes so that they don't fall into the category of becoming unhoused. So this is an ambitious project. We recognize that. We have an ambitious capital campaign to go right along with it. So our goal is to raise about $5.4 million. We've raised 1.17 so far. So we're excited that we've crossed that $1 million threshold. We have a great team behind us. Both of our boards are kind of built to do this, are very strong and active and excited about the mission. And then we also have a capital campaign steering committee. So those are folks who are well connected in our community, are willing to open doors for us and be ambassadors. So we're really confident about the path that we're taking and are excited to invite all our community members and to be a part of that, whether that be through making a donation or through spreading the word or through getting us connected to other folks who would be interested in finding out more about the project. We love giving tours of the facility. It makes it real for people to walk around, and we can kind of point out what's going to be going where. So we're open to doing that with anybody who may be interested.
We're working with ARQ Architects, Lucy and Paul of Kittery. They're local, their design is beautiful. It will be LEED certified. We probably won't go for the LEED certification, but
Very energy
it's
efficient.
super expensive, but it's an energy efficient building. If the funding comes through, there'll be green roofs and solar panels. So we're super excited about that. Lucy and Paul are incredible architects who will improve the look of this property immensely. So anyone who wants to come and see the photos on our walls of this, the images, they're on our website too. But it's really going to be something else for this community to have. And
We have one more meeting with the planning department here in front of the planning board to get our final approvals, which we hope to be able to obtain by the end of next month. So that will be a really exciting step for us, is to have those approvals under our belt and really be able to move forward, getting more in-depth construction quotes and moving right along in the development timeline. The housing project that I mentioned is funded separately, so that actually already is fully funded through a grant from Maine Housing. And that will be in a separate part of the property that will feel much more residential. And so that will be really a nice combination, because our clients, they receive support from our case manager, but they'll also be able to very easily access all the services under Mainspring as well. So it's kind of a nice, Mainspring and the affordable housing go really nicely together. The property is almost 2 acres, so it's actually bigger than you'd think when you look at it.
yeah, it is. It's been fun being over there. We're storing a lot of food there because we're bursting at the seams at our current location. And we'll see a lot of individuals that we serve who will be either walking and cutting through the parking lot to Walgreens or the post office. And, where the property sits, it's right in front of the village and Foxwell. And we've had so many people from Foxwell. My favorite story of one gentleman from Foxwell say, "Oh, this is great. We're going to need to buy a golf cart. We're going to all just come right down to the grocery store. Foxwell, we're going to have golf carts." I'm like, I can see it now. These fluorescent Foxwell golf carts with people coming to shop at Footprints. But it's certainly an exciting location and convenient for particularly Elliott residents who really have a difficult time finding Footprints because it's just not a road that people travel as much. So we're really excited about the access and visibility of this location for Kittery, obviously, but Elliott, who we are equally serving, it's a really exciting location for us. Open it to questions, and
Yeah, happy to answer any
You
questions.
mentioned your website. Is it an individual website, or do you now have a website common for Mainspring?
we have both. We each have Fairtide and then Footprints, and then we have the mainspringcollective.org. It's just www.mainspringcollective.org. And then that will talk about this project.
Then we also have a newsletter that we've been sending out monthly, so you can sign up for that newsletter through our website, and that we're going to continue to send that out on a monthly basis to keep people posted on everything. And we also have social media accounts where we're sending out relevant information and articles and so forth.
Have you officially launched the capital campaign, or?
So for those of you that are familiar with capital campaigns, oftentimes they'll run in a quiet phase and then a community phase. Ours is a little bit different because we've been public with this for, since the beginning, really. And we're going through the planning board process. It's been out in the community. So we are, our campaign is
One phase.
we are going for it. We're focusing right now on fostering some major gifts. But we will be having some community events and really opening it up a little bit more to the community probably later this summer. And please sign up for our newsletter because we'll be sending out information on all of that. But we do have some events in the works and have been having some really great and promising conversations with some potential significant donors. So we're hoping to see those come through sooner rather than later.
And your service areas pretty much overlap. Is there, I mean, is that gonna be a challenge, trying to, make sure one pot of money is spent where, it's supposed to get spent? How's that?
In terms of the capital campaign, the money that,
No, I'm talking
after.
just- yeah.
So we are not merging agencies. We'll run as our own individual agencies under the umbrella of Mainspring. And so we will continue to fundraise as our own agencies for the folks that we serve. You can speak to footprints, but Fairtide's service area is a little bit flexible. We serve the greater Seacoast area because of the folks we work with. They tend to move around a little bit, but we serve people from Portsmouth. We have clients in Portsmouth. We work really closely with Crossroads House and help move folks from their shelter into housing. We have clients all the way in Berwick. We have some clients up in Agunquit, so we kind of run the gamut.
We are primarily Kittery and Elliott. When you have a contract with the USDA, you are required to serve anyone who walks through your door, which follows along with our beliefs anyhow. We are starting to see more and more individuals who are coming as far south, or from far north as Biddeford. And we've done a lot of work around culturally relevant food, so we're starting to see pockets of different individuals of ethnic groups where we're really tailoring to that culturally relevant food need. So we are becoming the word of mouth for a couple different populations, which is great. We will serve anyone that walks through our door, so there won't be any issue like I know YCCA serves, a ton of Southern York County. Anyone who walks through our door, we are happy to serve. 85% of our clientele still is Kittery and Elliott, but I see that changing with this visible location, and happy for that. A lot of people don't like to go to the food pantry in their own town because of the stigma attached, and we're really hoping to change that stigma, which is the reason that we're switching to this model. One of the many reasons, but there was a little boy that came in last week and said, I just love when it's our turn to wait. And it just broke my heart. I mean, he was very sweet about it, right? At 3, he's like, I just love coming to Footprints when it's our turn to wait. And I was like, oh. But that's his memory, right, of each week coming and waiting his turn to come shop. And so when we have the grocery store model, we'll be able to, people will shop, but there won't be any waiting. But yes, to answer your question, there should be a significant overlap of all communities served.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more to what the housing on the campus is going to look like? Is it families, individuals, and also for the housing with the larger program that you mentioned? How many units is that? And if people are coming from Biddeford and is there an organizational effort to coordinate with other agencies so that there are services in Biddeford or whatever?
Yeah, so in terms of the housing, it will be 6 units. 5 units of 5 of those units will be 1-bedrooms, and 1 of the units will be a studio. So it'll be mostly single individuals, and that will be be in one very attractive looking building structure.
Like an apartment building type of thing?
Yes, yep. But it'll fit in with the architecture of the community. And I'm not sure about the larger project you were.
I think you referenced that there is another affordable house.
Yeah, so Fairtide will be acquiring a property from the town of Kittery, we're working on an MOU right now and on the details of it, but it's actually the property that's across from where Footprints currently is. We responded to an RFP that the town put out for that, and were awarded the property. So we will be getting that and building a very similar sized project. It'll be 4 to 6 units on that site as well. Waterfront property. But we won't charge a premium. And then your other question, so there's actually a lot going on in our state to coordinate care in the different regions that exist here in Maine. I'm part of the statewide homeless council, and one of our big initiatives over the last several years has been to create a system. They call it hubs, which is why this becomes confusing, because we were creating a hub. But mostly each county in our state is going to have a hub coordinator who makes sure that services that are provided in that area are done in a coordinated fashion, and then those hubs all connect together to each other. So Mainspring is tying into a larger effort that's happening in our state, to mostly focused on folks experiencing homelessness, but of course everything's connected, so it runs the gamut for people that are experiencing other needs as well. So we are regularly in touch with other agencies in other parts of our state, and I am part of a Region 1 Homeless Council, which ties up to the statewide Homeless Council. So that's a long answer to your question, but Maine actually is doing a very good job of trying to coordinate care and make sure that people are getting the care they need in their own municipality, but also getting somewhere else if that's where they need to be, and making sure that the resources that we have coming down from the federal government through the state are put in the right places.
And in regards to the food piece, we work pretty closely with other food providers throughout the county, where there's a network of individuals who are part of this group that will email, and I might say, like, we have a copious amount of children's diapers who needs them. But when an individual comes who might be from Biddeford because they heard that we have coconut milk and lemongrass and some culturally relevant food, we often will say, we'll always say, here's the food pantry in your own town. You're welcome to continue coming, which some do and some don't. Some go, I didn't even know we had one. So that we always continue that, but we still welcome anyone who comes through. Good Shepherd, the food bank in Maine, is really adopting the model of people traveling to whoever is best fitted for their needs to access food. So there's just not that barrier or the stigma or restrictions, which are the 3 things we're trying to get rid of in food pantries, are barriers, stigma, and restrictions. And so we're really cautious of making anyone feel that they can't come through our door. But we do work closely with all the food providers.
We have a number of groups represented here today, the Rotary, the churches, and others. How can we best support you to help your venture? And I know financially, but are there other ways that we can support what you're doing?
I think we could both answer at the same time. Be an ambassador for us, speak to the community about this project, make sure that everyone knows that affordable housing isn't as scary as it sounds, right? No, I'm kidding. But I think being an ambassador for Mainspring is the most important tool that anyone can carry in this community for us.
Do you have a PR group that is working with you to get the word out with flyers and things?
We
You are the spokesperson.
we do.
We actually are working with capital campaign consultants right for this phase of the work, and they've been helping a little bit with that. We have some of that expertise exists in people on our boards and on our capital campaign steering committee, and we recently hired a development coordinator for Fairtide who's also doing some hours for Mainspring, so she's been helping support that work as well. But that's to that point. If there are folks who have specific expertise, experiences that they think they could lend a hand in our efforts, we'd love to talk with you about those kind of volunteer opportunities. In-kind donations are also always welcome. Once we are ready to move into the facility, we'll need some helping hands to make that happen.
Right.
And then I think in addition to being an ambassador for the project, helping other folks understand the need, because that's, I think, one of the big barriers here, is that we exist in a community where the need is invisible. And it doesn't, homelessness and food insecurity, it's not something that hits you in the face that you can see. But it exists for sure, and it's becoming an increasing issue. And we've got a lot of people that are doubled up with family or friends, or couch surfing, or some people living in their cars. But that's not something that is seen or talked about. And so I think in order for us to be able to get the support we need for Mainspring, we need people to understand that we're addressing an issue that is really that exists here. So talking about the issue, being an ambassador for the project, and just sending people our way.
I think we hear that, one of the number one conversations I'm involved in is someone saying, well, I don't think there's any food insecurity in the community. I don't see a need. And I always respond with the exact same thing. What are you looking for? And everyone always goes, oh, right. I'm like, you can't see poverty. You can't see hunger. You can't see homelessness. It's a really invisible issue and condition that does exist in Kittery and Elliott. I'm sure you see it in the schools, and it's impacting all of us on a level that maybe we don't know, but just that one little bit grumpier driver might not have gone to bed that night, because they might have been working their third shift, or the child that comes to school just a little bit off and getting attention by doing something that he or she, doesn't mean to do, but maybe it wasn't fed that day, or maybe got him or herself on the bus. It impacts all of us, and but you can't see it. So to Emily's point, expressing that there really is a need in this community is important, because that's one of our most commonly had conversations. And if anyone would like to, play that role of ambassador, and you would like some printed materials, we can certainly provide those for you.
Is there any transportation in place for people that can't come to you?
That's a good question. So York County Community Action does do some local transportation. We've talked to them about potentially being able to add Mainspring as a stop on one of their set routes. They also do on-demand transportation depending on the need. We're also exploring the idea of having the Coast Bus be able to extend their route up to Mainspring. It's kind of a chicken and the egg, though, because they have to see that there's going to be demand. So we're working with the town and starting to have some of those conversations about, especially because we'll have some more housing there, and I could see that being a really popular stop, actually, with all the folks from Foxwell and down in the village. But that's a really great question, because
Yeah,
that's a
sure.
huge barrier in our state in general. But
And just microscopically on footprints, we deliver to individuals who cannot get to the food pantry. We are also hoping, we're a model for a pilot program out of Feeding America, where it's an order ahead app, where individuals can place their order online and then pick it up at a designated set time. We are looking to put refrigerated lockers in, so if an individual, say, we have a number of individuals who work during all of the hours that we're open, so they order ahead. One of us goes down to the food pantry in an off hour, sets boxes out, and it's not as dignified as it could be. But we are working with a refrigerated locker company so that an individual could order ahead on this online program, place their order, we put it into a refrigerated locker, they get a QR code and come pick it up at any time of day they want, which we're super excited about. So just that, another way to decrease the barriers to accessing support.
And you had mentioned briefly some mental health support screening. I'm imagining that that's an interrelated issue with homelessness and food insecurity, and how is that going to connect?
Yes, mental health is a growing issue, and it is absolutely tied into homelessness and housing and economic insecurity. And so that's something that's really important for us to have as a covered service under Mainspring's umbrella. So we've been talking with a couple different partners, and we haven't landed on what that will look like exactly yet, but a few of the medical partners we've been talking with also have mental health counselors under their service umbrella. And so if we have landed on one of those partnerships, that they could provide mental health support in addition to some like medical triage type services. We've also talked with a few community members who are retired or current mental health counselors who have expressed interest in doing some pro bono work. So another option could be to have some folks that volunteer to do some hours at Mainspring to have coverage in that way. So we will have mental health coverage. It's just what that exactly looks like, we're not completely sure yet.
Another thing I think is important is help for people who are helping people. So my wife and I, over the last several years, have had a couple of people that we've helped out. As far as homelessness, we had a homeless woman who was living in her car. She slept on our driveway for 9 years. Because she just didn't trust the agencies, that type of thing. Another one is a guy with a brain injury. It took us 2.5 years to get him into a group home. And they finally placed him in Ossipee, New Hampshire, which is over an hour from here. But it's really been a privilege to do that. And I'd love to see some way of enabling community members who are able to do that type of thing to do it. Because there's a lot of people that just don't, you know, when they see something too organized, they're like, no, I don't, you know, and yeah, I think that's something that's really important, and I don't, you know, like I said, it took us 2.5 years of crippling paperwork in the state. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I worked as an engineer for over 40 years and did test plans that ran into the hundreds of pages, and the state paperwork was just crushing.
It's daunting.
And this poor guy had no way he would ever be able to deal with any of that. I barely could myself.
Yeah.
You bring a good point. It might be interesting to have, when I worked at Krempel Center, which is a brain injury center in Portsmouth, there was a caregiver support group, and that caregiver support group really determined what individuals needed. And maybe it is work on the paperwork or support with just that ability to have a conversation with someone else who's in that caregiving position, but it's just another great idea that we hadn't thought about yet.
Yeah, and I know we have, like, our case manager spends a lot of time on paperwork. I know Heather Roberge, who does the outreach for York County Community Action, does that as well. So, first of all, you're amazing.
Yeah, true.
That, you know, I think you're a model for other community members. But I hope that Mainspring could serve as a resource for folks like you too, who, okay, I don't know where to go to get help to help this person. I'm just going to walk in the door to Mainspring and see if I can get that figured out. And I know, at least with our case manager, she will go anywhere. So she would, you know, if it felt comfortable for whoever it was you were helping, she would come to the house and meet with them. And, but yeah, that's a great nugget to
Do you have an
think
idea
about.
of how many hardcore homeless people we have in Kittery, in our area, who are, the interesting thing, people living in their cars, we don't think about that very often. And I was over at Panera one day, and an older man came in and grabbed a paper and just sat in the corner and just sat there. And I said, can I buy you a cup of coffee or anything? No, I'm all set. We got talking. Come to find out he went to high school with my mom.
Wow.
And when I saw him pull up, and he parked right next to my car, and when I walked out, I looked in his car. It was obvious he was living in it.
Yeah.
He was a guy in his 80s living out of his car.
Yeah. It's really hard to get an exact number. I think because you have people who are living in their cars, for example. You have some people who are living in tents, more so during the warmer months. But then, like I was saying before, you have a lot of people who are just either in unsafe living situations or doubled up and living with family or friends. And technically, based on HUD's definition of homelessness, they're not homeless, right? But they are. They have no home of their own. And so every state is required to do what's called a point-in-time count on one day in January. You're supposed to go out and count everybody that's homeless. You know, it's so, you know, there's that effort. But I think you take that data with a grain of salt. So once we get, we're also working toward a coordinated entry system in our state. It's one of the goals of the Statewide Homeless Council. And once we have that up and running, we also will have a better idea of statewide how many people are experiencing homelessness at any one point in time, and how are we doing with getting those folks resources, getting them housing, and keeping them housed. So because people that are homeless are also fairly transient, they could be counted here and then also counted in Biddeford and also counted in Sanford. So that was a long answer to your question, but we don't have a great idea, but it exists for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.